adjustments there, and happy almost New Year. Two more nights, really only one more night. Tomorrow night is New Year's Eve. And I'm getting on here in another Tuesday. And for those of you who don't know, I am Jonathan League. I am a family therapist. I am an addictions counselor. And I have a whole range of videos on this YouTube channel to help people, help individuals with all kinds of stuff, a lot of addiction and parenting. And tonight I am focused on talking to parents with older children, adult children who are stuck, kind of like failure to launch type situations, right? I'm talking about adults who uh, lack direction, they lack purpose, they are stuck, right? And you might be that parent, that loved one who is saying, how do I help them? Or maybe you're angry at them, maybe you're frustrated at them, right? Because you're still paying for things, you're still watching them not take steps, you feel like you're being taken advantage of. And most of all, you're concerned, you're worried that they're not doing well, and you might be wondering how to help. So that's what I'm talking about here. I just wanted to go on and give you a little bit of information. And the title of this tonight is I'm talking about three questions that parents ask me the most. But I really want to tell you, it's not as much about the questions; it's about the fear underneath the question. Um, See, let me set this up for you. When your child is stuck, and especially your adult child, right? They just don't have that purpose, that direction. They're not moving forward. At some point, there needs to be a conversation. At some point, there needs to be some limits, some boundaries, some steps that are set. And another way of saying that is at some point, there needs to be some change. And change is hard, change is difficult. So, what tends to happen is when it's time to do something, it brings up fear. And that's where these questions come out. Because parents will say, oh, wait a minute. Okay, question number one, uh, what if we push too hard, right? We don't want to push too hard. And when parents are asking this, what I'm hearing is they're worried about the reaction. They're worried about the result. What if my child rages on us? What if they shut down? What if their anxiety spikes? What if they're really struggling and we don't want to be the cause for that? We don't want to push too hard. How do we have this softer approach? So thanks for watching. We're talking about when adult children are stuck, and mainly for parents or loved ones who are trying to help them. And these are questions I get asked, which are really a lot of fears. And that first one is, what if I'm pushing too hard? Well, what do you mean by pushing too hard? That really needs to be defined, right? Because a lot of times what parents are telling me is pushing, the way they're addressing things is not very effective, right? And so uh, it needs to be approached differently. Let me give you some examples, okay? One of the ways that I see parents push in ineffective ways, or loved ones push when someone's stuck, is they do it with emotion. Think about tonight. In 2 days, actually less than that, it's going to be a new year. And I guarantee you, there's going to be a lot of families, a lot of parents, a lot of individuals that are going to be kind of assessing what has and has not happened in this last year and their worries and hopes about what's going to happen next year. Right? And it's in those kind of moments where a parent's likely to say, what the heck? Why are we still stuck? Why are they still not working? Why are they still not doing anything here? And in those moments, they feel compelled to, okay, we're going to do something about this. We are going to address this situation. Well, what happens is it comes with a lot of emotion, right? A lot of anger, maybe guilt. Like, how could you be doing this to us? Put them on a guilt trip, that kind of thing. It makes sense. The emotion is real. I understand where the emotion is coming from, but that's not how you want to motivate, because all that's going to do is cause a shutdown or an argument or the same kind of behavior that has happened over and over. So when you're really trying to help someone, leading with emotion and letting that drive and using that as your motivator, that's not going to work. That's many times going to dig them in anymore. Uh, Hey there, who just joined in? Rocky Knoll, welcome. Hey, we're talking about when adult children or anyone really gets stuck, and about the fears and questions that come out of that. So, um, yeah, so pushing with emotion, that's not effective. The other way, I call this like misplaced or misguided pushing or attempts. And put it this way, you don't know what's going on with that person, right? If you haven't been talking with them, if you haven't been connecting with them, and if this is your adult child, you don't know what is exactly getting them hung up, what is spiking their anxiety, what is causing them to feel defeated, why they're afraid of failing, right? And if you jump into a conversation, if you push, you might push in the completely wrong direction. You might miss the entire point, and it's one more ineffective conversation. Or uh, because you're not communicating, you don't have the right goal set. You don't know, is this the right place to push, or is this too big of a step? Is it too small of a step? Right? If there's not that communication, that pushing is not going to work. So that's a big point I make with people when I say, okay, what if we push too hard? Well, what do you mean by pushing? Right? You have to have connection, right? And then it's hard to push too much, right? Because the connection will correct itself. I can't tell you how many times I've told families, and I've explained this to them as a therapist. It's like, when you are connected, when you are having effective conversations, if the step is too big, that will come out in the conversation, right? If you're missing a hidden anxiety, that will come out in the conversation. If there's an insecurity, uh, if there's an insecurity there, it will be known in the conversation, right? And so those things get resolved, and you always want to be moving forward. There's always room to grow. uh, yes, I like the salt and pepper lyric there. Um, and okay, actually, I do have a practice. All right, so let's talk about uh, the next question that parents ask me when 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 they're worried about the fears about their children being stuck. Okay, the other question is, what if nothing changes? Right, and let me set this one up again. Okay, here's another situation where a fear is coming in, right? And what I hear the parents saying, what I hear a loved one saying when they say, what if nothing changes, right? What if we're at the end of 2026 and nothing has changed? What if it's the end of 2028? What if it's the end of 2049 and nothing has changed? We're still in this place, right? That's a scary thought. But what's underneath that fear is, I don't know if I want to try. Right? I don't want to be in that situation, and they get paralyzed. And we don't want anyone to be paralyzed. Here's the reality: things will change. They will change. They have no choice but changing, because you can change, right? If you're that parent, if you're that loved one who's dealing with someone who is stuck, right? When you change your behaviors, you change the way you talk to them, you find more effective ways to get to the heart of things. When you learn how to set healthy, appropriate limits and boundaries, uh, you are making a change, and that is going to necessitate a change. What are we talking about? We are talking about really kind of like failure to launch situations when a young adult, perhaps your child, is stuck, right? They're stuck, they're not motivated, they don't have direction, they're not moving forward, and it's time to do something different. It's time to approach it differently. And that's where a lot of parents, a lot of loved ones will come to me with these questions, which are really fears about making that change, starting that process, and it keeps them from moving forward. And so that's where, and I'm a therapist. I'm a family therapist. I'm an addiction counselor. And that's where I try to help them understand that change will happen. It can happen. Now, we can make an argument how long the change is going to happen. I've seen change happen very quickly, right? Because a family is able to come together and they're able to talk about what's really going on, why they really got stuck. They feel love, they feel connected, they feel supportive. They worked it out, they sorted it out, and change happens amazingly fast, and that's great. But some situations are more complicated, right? Some situations, maybe there's a trauma that's happened. Maybe there's an addiction and bad habits that are really strong and they have to be dealt with first. And, or at least at the same time, right? It complicates it. Maybe there's hurts and wounds in that family, in those relationships that are complicated. Maybe uh, there are factors in that family that in their life, in their home, in their living situation that really complicate things, that make change difficult. In those situations, change is much slower. It takes time. Sometimes it can go fast, but a lot of times it's going to take longer because it's more complicated, but it's still possible. It still will happen. And that's what we're talking about, is ways to make that change happen. Um, so I see some questions, and I'm happy to do that. Answer these questions and focus in on them. So if you can hang with me just for a little bit, I want to make a couple other points, and then I'm here to chat, not all night, but for a little while anyway. All right. So the questions, the fears that we've been talking about. Number one was, what if I push too hard? Right. And we said we gotta look at, what do you mean by pushing? Because if you're pushing, trying to motivate in the wrong way without being connected, it's not going to work. But when you're connected and you're having the right conversations, it's hard to push too much, right? It'll get corrected very quickly. The second thing that we were talking about is, what if nothing changes? That fear that things aren't going to change. So why even try? And we talked about, it will change when you have the right approach and you know what you're doing and how to approach it. And then the third question I want to address is, what if I make it worse? People will ask me that, well, what if we set these limits and their anxiety spikes? What if they fight us? What if uh, there's tension? What if we repeat that argument? What if there's rage, right? It's all these worries about what if this stuff can happen and what if it's going to be worse. But we need to define what worse means, or better yet, what uh, how to redefine worse. Right? Change is hard. Change is difficult, right? And you can't experience change. You can't. Your child, your loved one, the family is not going to experience change without going through something difficult. You're going to have the difficult conversations. You're going to have to talk about the things that have happened, the hurts and the wounds. You're going to have to talk about the habits that have been holding things back. You're going to have to talk about the internal struggles. And you are going to have to do that. So, uh, oh, hello back. Thanks. Who's that? Jordan Dunn. So you're going to have those conversations. And those are difficult conversations. And you're going to have to face things that are difficult. That's a part of the process. So when you're asking me if there is an easy way, no. And I'm not trying to make this seem overwhelming. I'm trying to make it realistic. Right? There's no magic saying, no words, right? You've got to do the hard work. You've got to face the real things. And here's the thing, if your loved one is stuck, if your child is stuck, many times they're going to see you as the agent of change or the person who is forcing them to deal with stuff they don't want to deal with, right? And in their mind, they're like, hey, you know what? If you would just drop this whole let's talk about it, if you would stop with the limits and stop with the boundaries and stop it, then I can go back to avoiding all my stress, my anxiety, and everything that's keeping me stuck. And sometimes that can come across with a lot of anger or a shutdown. You know, uh, that's part of the hard process. So, what if it gets worse? Well, sometimes it's got to feel worse. It's going to feel worse before it feels better because you've got to do the hard work and you've got to have the hard conversations. When I'm working with a family, as I mentioned, I'm a family therapist. When I'm working with a family and I see them talking with emotion and tears and anger, and you can feel the tension in the room. If they're talking about things that they have never been able to talk about before, right? I don't see that as worse. I see that as better. It's hard. I feel for them and I want to help them get through that moment as quickly as possible, but they need to have that conversation. So it actually is, it's a good thing. Right? So we don't want to fear things being difficult. We want to know that that is part of the process. And uh, so yeah, so that's what I would say to the whole, what if it gets worse? All right, so let me recap here. I've been talking about primarily for parents with older children, adult children who are stuck. They don't have purpose, direction. They're not moving forward, and you're really worried about them, and there's a lot of tension. But it could also be a loved one. It could also be, anyone else in a stuck position. And it's time to make changes. It's time to have a conversation. It's time to talk about what's going on. Maybe set some limits, set some goals. And as soon as you are ready to do that, fear comes up, and those are the questions, but what if I push too hard? What if nothing changes? What if it gets worse? Right? And we were talking about how you can't be consumed by those fears, that it's part of the process. It's a difficult thing, but you can do it. And it's not about perfection. This might be my final point, and then I'll interact a little bit. Um, it's not about perfection, right? It's about progress. Right? You want to keep moving forward, and it's not always going to be clean and smooth. A lot of times, people will say to me, as their therapist, they're like, Jonathan, we don't say it as eloquently as you or as smooth as you. And I say, that's okay. I have a lot of practice with this. I know how to get things across. It's more the fact that you're trying, that you stay engaged and you keep working at it, and you're taking the right approach, and you'll figure that stuff out. So that's what the kind of encouragement that I want to give you is, you can do this, right? And things will change. If you're in that stuck place, you don't have to stay stuck forever. Right? Let me give you a couple resources here, people. One is, obviously I have a YouTube channel and there's a lot of videos on there. There's one that I did recently. It was my last video, not a live video, but what they call it, long form video. It's a 10-minute teaching, and there's a lot of details in what I'm telling you about. Right? I'm telling you about how to get over these fears, but it all comes back to conversations. And that video is titled "The 5 Unstuck Conversations." And the reason I do that is, or called it that, is it's all about how you have those conversations with your loved one. So it starts off with, first you got to get connected. You have to get back to the true emotion and trust and love in the conversation. You got to get connected. You got to remember that you're on the same team and you want the same thing, and you're there for each other because you love each other, even if you're not getting along. You want the same thing and you care about each other. And then you got to figure out what's going on, right? You got to have a conversation that identifies, why are we hung up? Why are we stuck? Where's the insecurity? What's going on? Where are the wounds? And then you've got to know, how can we support each other when we're struggling with making this change, when the insecurities come up, when the anxieties come up. And then you got to set some limits. You got to set some goals. How do you do that? And most importantly is, how do you follow through? How do you follow through so things don't fall apart? That is an excellent video that you can look at, as well as a lot of other videos I have. All right, that's all I was going to say. I know I got a couple of questions here, and comments and stuff. So hopefully I don't shake this too much as I'm looking at it. New to my channel, thank you. Let me see. All right, well, it was a comment here. Looks like Bruce Lena was saying, I have ADHD, OCD, picking disorder, and I have childhood PTSD, and I've been working on myself for years. Good for you, right? The PTSD, that says a lot, right? That's trauma. There's a lot of trauma there, and that's probably made some of those the ADHD, the OCD, even worse, because trauma, well, stress, right? Post-traumatic stress disorder, stress really exacerbates it, really intensifies those symptoms. The more stressed you are, the harder it is to focus. The more stressed you are, the more likely you're going to go into self-soothing behaviors. And that's where a lot of like the picking disorders and things like that happen. It's a form of coping, of self-soothing, and then it becomes completely involuntary. People don't even realize they're doing it. And everyone can relate to it if you really think about it. There's times you've had, maybe you bit your nails, or you're just not even aware you're doing something. You catch it like, oh, I have this habit that I'm doing. And sometimes those things are really hard to change. So good for you for working on yourself. I appreciate you sharing that. And Behave says, Jesus loves me. Yes, he does. See, Bruce Lena. Okay, I hope I'm saying that right. A strong person deals with their inner problems, and you are dealing with your inner problems, and that is a form of strength, right? To focus in on yourself, and to really look at what's going on inside of me. So many of us want to focus on what's outside of us. If I could just change the environment, right? If I could just have more money, if I could just get that person to treat me nicer, if I could just have some more money, if I could just get a fair shake, then I would feel better. Then I would be better. And yeah, I mean, sometimes those things like help or are really big, but what about what's going on the inside, right? How you view yourself, how you treat yourself, your own insecurities, your own fears and anxieties, your fears of failures, your struggles, your traumas, the things that have happened, right? It does take a lot of strength to look inside of you and say, what's going on in here? And how can I grow? How can I change? How can I heal? A lot of people don't like to think. I've seen this, right? Because it's hard to think. It's hard to be introspective. Most people just want to talk to other people, right? They just want to entertain themselves, distract themselves, or talk, and that's fine. It's great to talk to people. There's a place for that, but it's a lot harder to take a moment and to think inside of yourself, right? To say, but what is going on? Why am I thinking this? Or what am I going to do? Or what's next? Because then you have to have this like conversation in your head. You've got to answer it. You got to think through. And sometimes it's segments, like you've got these different parts of you who are talking. Well, maybe we should do this. I disagree. We should do this. Yeah, well, what about that? Right? And there's this like internal dialogue that can become really confusing and difficult. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that. But when you are willing to do that, you can sort some things out. You can figure some things out and have some insight. So having moments of reflection, having moments of connection, connecting with yourself is very important. And here's another little truth. Uh, your ability to connect with others is directly related to your ability to connect with yourself. If you can't feel your own emotions, if you can't connect with what's going on inside, you're going to be limited to be able to do that with somebody else. So many times, most times, maybe all times, the the best thing, starting place for working on your relationships is working on yourself, right? Getting connected with yourself, seeing and knowing who you are before you try to relate to others. So, little tangent there. Um, so, your voice and accent are excellent. Are you a broadcaster? Well, I guess this is broadcasting on a small scale, but I've done a lot of videos. I've done a lot of trainings. Speaking, that is something I enjoy. I love teaching, and I guess you do that enough, and you learn how to talk and connect. But there's always room for growth there. So, but I do enjoy teaching. So thank you for that. I appreciate the compliment. Another thing. Let me just read this first. Uh, yeah, okay, I'll read that out loud. So I'm stuck. I haven't been able to get a job because of it. I haven't maybe have horrible anxiety to work. I worry that I will be at a job that will be toxic, and I've had many toxic uh, hair salons that I've worked at. All right, so wow, yeah, and I could totally get the toxicity of a hair salon. I've obviously I get my hair cut, and sometimes there can be quite a lot of banter in there and a lot of tension, and I see it and I feel it, and I've often felt for the people cutting my hair in there, just because sometimes that environment does not feel very healthy. But what I'm hearing from you is the anxiety. It sounds like it becomes uh, overwhelming, and you get stuck, and you don't even want to go into those situations, um, and you worry about that. There's a couple things that I want to say to you. Uh, One, obviously, you're seeing how that fear is paralyzing you. You know, you're worried about what could happen, and that's where the what ifs come in, right? What if it's toxic? I mean, you literally said that, or close to it. You know, what if that environment's toxic? I'm afraid of that. Yeah, and you're asking yourself, well, what if it's toxic? What if someone's attacking me or doing whatever it is, right? And right there is the birth of strong anxiety, because you're asking yourself a negative outcome, a negative scenario. What if I'm in a toxic environment, right? Well, that's not going to be a positive thing, right? You're on an anxious path. And so you're going to say, and your mind's going to play this scenario of you're in there working on someone's hair, and someone else is just laying into you or making fun of you or whatever is going on, and in your mind that's horrible and it's overwhelming. And so, and what if people are being so toxic with me? Then what's going to happen? They're being so rude. And then your mind goes to, well, maybe I'd have to leave early. Or maybe I'd do a bad job and the customer would get upset at me. And the what if leads to another what if. And it's a fear after a fear and anxiety after anxiety after anxiety, to the point like, I can't do it. And here's the reality is you've diminished who you are, your ability, your confidence, right? You've talked yourself, you've thought yourself out of being able to go into that salon and to be a kick butt hairdresser. Um, and yes, those situations, those environments can be very difficult, but you've got to think about it in a different way. You've got to come at a place of believing that you can manage, that you can handle it. That's where I love the idea of like an anchor thought. It's where instead of thinking about the fear and how bad it's going to be, you think about a realistic outcome. Not like I'm going to go in there and I'm going to have someone give me $1,000 tip and everyone's going to love me and they're going to carry me off on the shoulders. That's not realistic, right? It's more of the fact like, you know what? I'm going to go in there. I'm going to stay focused on me. I'm going to stay focused on that I'm good at what I do and that I believe in myself, and these other people don't get to define me, and I don't have to take on their anger, their anxiety, their toxicity. I don't have to take that on, and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to do my thing, and then I'm going to get home and I'm going to be sitting on the couch watching Netflix, proud of myself that I made it through a day, that I was able to get through that. You've got to have some thought that you believe in that guides you. And I'm not saying it's going to make it easy, but when you run from your anxiety, it grows. Every time you stay stuck at home, every time you don't do something because of fear, you've convinced your mind, you've convinced your body, like your body knows what it feels like, right, to be stuck. And everything starts to believe, I can't do this. It's too much. I can't go to work. I can't do this thing. And it builds up too much. And the next time it's even harder, right? And get some support. Talk to some people who know who you are, who believe in you, who are going to support you. So, I know I don't have any titles on here, and I know some people are coming in and out. My name's Jonathan. I'm a family therapist and addictions counselor. I don't know if that's on the titles or that kind of stuff. I can't see that from where I am. But we're just talking tonight. We were talking about fear and fears that keep people stuck and from making changes. And now I'm just answering some questions. And thank you for that question. I really appreciate your boldness to do that. Um, what is the association between PTSD and poor appetite? Okay. Most commonly, what's happening there is stress has a direct impact on our body, right? When we are stressed, we feel the stress, right? It can just run through our bodies. And stress changes our heart rate, it changes our blood vessels, they tend to constrict. That's why we get tingly hands or sweaty palms and feet, and it affects our body, it affects our breathing, and it affects our digestion, it affects our gut and all of that. So people who've experienced something very traumatic, post-traumatic stress disorder, right? It's a stress disorder from a trauma in the past. Uh, and that stress, every time they are triggered by something that reminds them or feels like their past trauma, their body, everything experiences it again. And so a lot of times what happens is when you're highly stressed, your body doesn't care about eating, right? Your body doesn't care about nutrition and all of that. It's stressed. It's moving into like a survival type situation, and food is not a priority in that moment. Now you might not be, many times you're not in a actually dangerous situation. You're just feeling like you are, but it affects your appetite. So some people who are chronically stressed with PTSD or any kind of stress, their appetite is impacted. They don't have an appetite. Or there's the other group, right? The other group who they actually overeat when they're stressed. I don't know if anyone wants to say which group they're in, but you tend to be in one of those, right? When you're really stressed, you lose your appetite, or you're really stressed and your appetite increases. It's kind of like a soothing thing. It's a dopamine rush. It's an escape from the stress. It's a little bit of relief, but it doesn't last long. So you got to eat more and you got to eat more and more. Um, so uh, that's a connection between PTSD and appetite. All right, let me move on. Um, I've been picking as a child my ears and my lips. Same person, yes. right? That the longer it's been going on, any kind of behavior, a habitual behavior, it's really ingrained and it's hard. But hopefully um, you've found some resources. There's all kinds of things from very practical things like fidget mechanisms, toys, rings. Keep your hands busy. There are gloves that you can wear. That can help with that. And there's many other techniques. So keep at it. I know those are really difficult things to change. All right. Um, I pause when I read these because sometimes there's been a few times I just start reading and I'm like, oop, that's not appropriate. Um, all right. Well, let's do this one. It says I'm currently unemployed. I'm in a lot of debt. The banks are after me, and I'm on the verge of suicide. Why don't companies give a chance to someone who has a university degree? So I want to pause for a moment and I want to just hear you, hear the pain that you're in, the desperation that I can hear in that response, and when someone is at that point of like they say, they're on the verge of suicide, that says there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of hopelessness, right? And that's part of it is like, how can I get away from this? How can I escape this? A couple things I want you to hear. This is temporary. It is so difficult. You're unemployed, you're in debt, banks are after you, right? And who knows why all that is, right? Some of that might be part of you, the changes that you need to make, some things that you need to look at in yourself and your own behavior. And some of it could be just things completely out of your control that have impacted you. But this is just a season in your life. There is always hope. There is always direction. Our moods change, right? Our moods are not permanent. They feel permanent, but there's always better days ahead. So what I want to encourage you to do is uh, is to reach out, talk to someone, just like you had the boldness to speak here and to share. Reach out to some people who care about you, who know you, and if uh, if you have maybe a mentor or someone that you trust that has been through it, reach out to those people, right? You don't have to do this alone. And there is a way to work out of it. And the debt, I'm not getting into a lot of detail, but believe me, I've known that it's a very real thing that I deal with. A lot of people, their mental health has been impacted because of their employment, financial situation, and it can change. It can change for you. So don't give up on that. But thank you for your boldness, and don't give up on yourself. But thank you for sharing that with this. If you want to reach out through my site, feel free. We can talk further. All right. All right. Someone's talking about the trades. Toxicity will be your favorite part. The trades, man, that is such a that's real. That is absolutely real. Um, uh, there's a lot of yeah. There's just a lot of negativity in that, and there's a lot of skill involved. And so I've worked with a lot of people who work in the trades, and that's a very real thing. Is it's not always the most healthy environment, and that's something that they can really be impacted by. So you've got to learn to really have some good self care and some strength. Let me see. Uh, mm, same person there. Just struggling. I hear you. You're an accountant, and it's such a difficult time. But I stick by what I was saying. Is um, Yeah, it's not all your fault. These things, I hear what you're saying, the downsizing, and like I said, sometimes it's tough times, but don't give up. Right? This is a tough time of year to be going through something like that. But you're not alone. I mean, look at this. I mean, there's people connecting online. You're not the only one struggling, and you don't have to feel alone. I want you to feel hope. I want you to feel encouragement. I don't want you to give up on yourself. There will be better times coming. Let me see. Yeah, and see some people are giving some advice there, and hopefully uh, it's all positive here. But yeah, so the topic of this that we've been talking about, really, it's evolved into fear, right? We've been talking about um, when people are stuck. And I was talking about mainly like when you know someone, either maybe your adult child or a loved one who is stuck, or if you are stuck and it's time to make changes. And our friend who, the accountant who, there's probably some changes that need to be made, right? You're going to maybe have to look at different types of employment or different ways to get those bills paid, different patterns and habits, whatever. It's there's change, external change, internal change. When there's change to be made, and we're afraid, right? What if it gets worse? What if nothing changes? And those fears keep us stuck. One of the biggest things that I say, and as a therapist, as a counselor, family therapist, is it's about not quitting, right? We get paralyzed. We get paralyzed with, what if it doesn't work? What if this happens? What if that? And then we get stuck. Nothing is going to happen if you're stuck. It's so logical if you think about it, right? It's like obvious. Right? If you're not moving, you're not moving. What a lot of people want is, I'm just going to sit here and wait until some lightning bolt comes down or an angel from heaven just gives me a revelation about what to do or how to get through this, or I'm just going to think and think and think and think about it. Your answer is in action, taking steps. What if it's the wrong step? Right? It's Anything is better than nothing. A lot of times we take a step and we realize, like, okay, that's not quite the direction, but at least I'm a little bit closer, even if I went to the side. You know, there's an analogy that I like to tell, and I love outdoors. I love a lot of hiking and backpacking, and sometimes you're walking along the trail, you're going, and all of a sudden there's a stream, right? And you don't want to get your boots wet, you don't want to fall in, but you got to get across that stream, right? There's no bridge, right? But there are stones. There's stones that are sticking up out of the water, and they're not in a representable pattern, but you can see there's some on this shore, there's some in the middle, and there's some next to the other shore. And you start realizing, like, hey, maybe there's a way I can hop from stone to stone and get across. But in this analogy, these stones are put there by nature, not by man. They're not in a straight line, right? So you can see there's a way. All the stones are close enough. There's a way, but they're not in a straight line. There's a way to get across, right? So you can sit there and you can think about it all day, and you can plan it out. Okay, I think I should start with this stone. I'll go to that stone, and you plan it out. But you eventually got to step on a stone, and you got to move forward. And I've done this before. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna step on this stone, that stone, that stone. I'm gonna get across. But I got a big old backpack on, and the wind's blowing, and whatever else is going on, and maybe one of those stones is more slippery than I thought. So I go to step on it, and my weight starts to shift, and my foot slips, and I can't reach that stone. I have to go sideways, or maybe I have to step back to the stone I was on before, and then go around a different way, right? But you're just going to keep stumbling and taking steps, and you're going sideways, this way, backwards a little bit, and eventually, you get across, right? You get across, and you're on the other side. You got to take those steps. It's not always a straight line, but if you don't take a step, you're not going to get anywhere, right? So getting unstuck is not about having the perfect plan. Getting unstuck is not about having all the answers. Getting unstuck is taking a step, figuring it out, and then learning where the next step is, right? And it's not always pretty, right? I've crossed many a stream like that, and I look like a fumbling, bumbling idiot as I'm going across, right? But you get across. Okay. Um, and someone said, "What's the topic of the stream?" And I was just talking about streams. That was very punny. All right. Let me see. Uh, Yeah, there's more encouragement for our friend the accountant, and I don't know how far back I'm in this. I'm catching up slowly, but yes, how wonderful those of you who are spreading niceness on the internet. Why get on here and spread hate? Uh, Spread niceness. Uh, okay. Oh, someone likes my jacket, uh, and I did not buy it. All my fashion comes from my wife, and she does a wonderful job at it. Uh, Oh, well, listen to this statement. I had a boss tell me that people would respect me more if I lose weight and get my teeth fixed. She was horrible to me. That is horrible, right? And that's what we're talking about, right? What people say and how they view you. And I can tell you, not only was that horrible, that's a miserable person. Who says that to somebody, right? Unless they're dealing with their own insecurities and fears and they have to project that on other people. But you don't have to take that. That's someone else's junk. Who says that? Right? Who says that except for a miserable person who's got to point out other things, right? In backhanded comments or whatever, right? That's not a healthy person. So why are you going to take on their opinion of you? Why are you going to take? Yes, it hurts. It sucks that they said that, but that's what I'm talking about. Knowing who you are and not taking this. Uh, what is cognitive behavioral therapy? Says Matt Reed Rody. Cognitive behavioral therapy, known as CBT, is, let me see if I can give it a real quick explanation. It's really about how our thinking affects our behaviors and our emotions. And so, well, then there's rational emotive behavior therapy, but it's all in that CBT thing. So it's like uh, what we, how we think about something is directly related to how we feel about something. So if we have a situation, I'm just trying to think of an analogy here. If well, let's just say we believe that we're really bad at something, right? If we really believe we're bad at something and we can't do better than that and we'll never be any better than that, how's that going to affect the way that we behave, right? Well, one, we're going to feel negative towards ourselves. We're going to have negative thoughts and or feelings about ourselves, emotions, and then it affects our behaviors. So cognitive behavioral therapy is the cognitions, our thinking. It's focusing on how we think and changing our thoughts, and therefore changing the way we feel, and then changing our behaviors. So it's logical when you think about it, but there's a little bit more that goes into because some thoughts are really hard to change. Uh, yes, I am a licensed therapist and a licensed addictions counselor. I'm a family therapist. Procrastination is a thing, says Kevin is humans. It's hard for me to read on this screen. Sorry if I'm getting these names right. Procrastination is a thing. Um, it is. But can I say something about lazy? Um, Lazy is a label. I was just talking to a young man this morning, um, and he's like, "I'm lazy," and I said, "Be careful with that, right? You're putting a label on yourself, and then if you're lazy, you're just lazy, right?" But I know he's been productive. We looked at like there are times you're very productive. You've you've done this, you've done this, and you've done this. Those are times where you have the right motivation. Those are the times where you're invested in something and your environment is the right thing. Because he was talking about when he's at home, he's totally distracted, never gets anything done. And he determined he needs to go to the coffee shop today and work at the coffee shop because when he's around people, he gets stuff done. I said, see, that's not about lazy. That's figuring out the right systems and the right routine and the right strategies and the right way to motivate yourself and to focus on the right things. I really don't think there's lazy people. I think there's people who quit and give up and don't want to try. But I think lazy is an unhelpful label. Okay. Uh, there's a lot of talk for the accountant. I hope it's all positive. I'm going to move. I'll read that stuff later. Um, all right. And okay. And to that, how do you know if he's lazy or just depressed or because he's sick? Vitamin imbalance causes breath. Well, all right. So the person I was actually talking to, if that's who you're referring to, I know this person, right? He's my patient. I've been working with him, and he struggles with a lot of uh, basically self-esteem type things. So he tends to put those labels on himself when he gets frustrated, and we've all been there, right? You know, things aren't working out, something isn't happening, and we want to get something done, and we keep getting distracted. We keep getting pulled into our phone, and we want to be harsh to ourselves in that moment, right? We want to that we say, oh, I'm lazy, I'm so worthless, I'm so stupid, I just wasted this whole day, I can't get anything done. And what does that do, right? It just rips you down, it just tears you up, and there's no uh, that becomes part of your identity, right? And in the reality is, we need to do something different, we need to make a change. But for his particular thing, there's times when he was massively productive, right? That he had accomplished some really great things. And this is him learning about himself. He's a young man, and he's learning things like he does better with external motivation when people are around. When he's in a quiet environment and he has technology, that distraction is too much. Why fight it? Why sit there and fight it when he can say, hey, I can change my environment and be productive, right? And then not be so harsh on himself, and to see that, um, yeah, that that doesn't he call himself lazy? Let's see. All right, but people with low self-esteem are like de facto automatically depressed because it does not feel good to feel less than. Well, that is true. You gotta be careful with depression too, because depression, the label, the title, it's really more of a spectrum. As far as uh, someone can be extremely clinically depressed, or someone can be a little bit down. But yes, so much of depression is related to our view of ourself. That is true. Uh, yeah, so maybe someone in his life is directly or indirectly, or society making him feel that way. Well, you know what? Yeah, I don't think. Um, well, and I've seen this with this person, and then other people as well. In they come from maybe a high performing family, or they have some siblings who are doing really well, and it's not even an intentional thing. They're not putting them down, but the comparison is happening in the way that people talk, and so um, they might feel like they're being put down or whatever it is, but yeah, they might come from a family that's comparing themselves too much. And then um yeah, and for this person, he does a lot of comparison. I think a lot of people have had just social media. Since the creation of social media, we've seen depression increase significantly, and a lot of that is the comparison and the messages of society, and then we can get into that whole thing, but absolutely those have an impact. So thank you for your comments. um, and all right. What are some strategies to quickly pivot out of negative self-talk, including hobbies? So we're saying are hobbies ways to do that? Um, yeah, I mean, there's basically two categories of how to approach that. One is distraction, and people who uh, so that might be your hobby, that might be watching something, that might be having a talk with somebody. It's really like shifting your mind and focusing on something else. And distraction can be helpful, but it doesn't deal with the other thing, which is like, why is that negativity there? Why is that negative self-talk? And that's more about your beliefs, how you see yourself, your insecurities, and such. So, um, and that's something that is a little bit deeper work, and working on how you really see yourself, because that's more of where the negative self-talk comes from, right? If there's this underlying fear that you're not good enough, or you're a screw up, or a fraud, or those kind of like really core shameful thoughts, then that comes out in the kind of like the surface self-talk that happens. So yes, distracting yourself out of a negative mood, but then doing some work, talking with someone, working it out with someone is always a good strategy. So, okay, I am about to head out. It's been an evening, and I appreciate everyone who is tuned in today and talking. Um, I'll figure out how to schedule this. I actually do a talk on Facebook every Tuesday night. If you want to look that up, it's the Facebook group is the Unstuck Journey, and then it currently has the subtitle of Failure to Launch and Addiction Support. But it's all about being stuck, and especially, excuse me, young adults who are stuck. Um, And there's also a Facebook page, Living with Addiction. It's all under my name. I think it's Jonathan League Family Therapist is how you can find it on Facebook. So that's an interactive group that I do, but YouTube's a little bit more open. You know, can you do groups in YouTube? I wonder if you can. I'm not sure. Like a closed group. Maybe you can. I'll have to look into that. But also, you can check out my channel, and there's a whole library of things to talk about, and all feel free to send me a comment and interact. I love that as well, and it kind of guides what I put out there. So I am Jonathan League. I appreciate talking to all of you tonight. I hope you have a wonderful evening, a great new year. Happy New Year, everybody. And I will be back live soon. So if you want to follow, we can chat again in the future. You guys have a really good night. Later.